June 28, 1914. The city of Sarajevo bustles with anticipation as the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, visits on a warm summer morning. The streets are lined with spectators, unaware that history waits around the corner, literally for a single fateful mistake. As the motorcade winds its way through the city, a wrong turn brings the Archduke's car to a sudden halt in front of a small cafe. Standing just meters away is Gavrilo Principe, a young nationalist whose earlier attempt to kill the Archduke had failed. In a moment of chance, opportunity and intent collide. Principe steps forward, raising his pistol. 2 shots ring out. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie slump in their seats. Within minutes, the couple is dead. The world has changed, though no one yet knows how deeply the tremors will be felt. This was not the work of a masterful assassin or a flawless plot. It was a convergence of error, coincidence, and divided loyalties. But how could a single wrong turn on a side street in Sarajevo ignite the deadliest war the world had ever seen? The story is often told as a simple chain reaction. One assassination, one spark, and suddenly world war. But the truth is far more complex. Was it really just one act that set the world ablaze, or was Europe already a powder keg waiting for any spark? For many, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand is remembered as the shot heard around the world. It's tempting to view this moment as the singular cause of World War I. Yet, beneath the surface, Europe in 1914 was a continent simmering with tension and rivalry. The great powers of Europe, Austria, Hungary, Serbia, Russia, Germany, France, and Britain, were locked in a web of alliances and mutual suspicion. Decades of imperial competition and arms races had created an atmosphere thick with mistrust and fear. Nationalism had taken hold in every corner of Europe. In the Balkans, ethnic tensions ran high as Slavic peoples sought independence from aging empires. Austria-Hungary, a patchwork of nationalities, feared disintegration. Serbia dreamed of uniting Slavs under its banner. Alliances meant to preserve peace instead turned local disputes into potential continental crises. The Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, faced off against the Triple Entente of France, Russia, and Britain. Each side prepared for a conflict they hoped to avoid but expected to come. Colonial ambitions added another layer of rivalry. Across Africa and Asia, the great powers competed for territory and influence, fueling competition and suspicion. The world's most powerful militaries stood ready, each fearing to be left behind by their rivals. By 1914, Europe felt both powerful and fragile. Leaders spoke of honor and prestige, but beneath their words lay anxiety over borders, allegiances, and the shifting balance of power. The stage was set for disaster, even if no one could predict the form it would take. Into this volatile mix stepped Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Habsburg throne. His visit to Sarajevo was meant to demonstrate imperial authority in a restive region, but for many Serb nationalists, it was a provocation, a symbol of foreign domination. Secret societies like the Black Hand plotted to strike a blow for their cause. Young men, driven by dreams of nationalism and revenge, volunteered for missions that promised glory or martyrdom. Gavrilo Principe was one of several conspirators sent to kill the Archduke. On the morning of June 28th, a failed bombing attempt rattled the procession but left the Archduke unharmed. The conspirators' hopes seemed dashed and the motorcade continued on its way, until a wrong turn brought Franz Ferdinand face to face with fate. The driver's mistake was simple but devastating. As the car reversed slowly, Principe saw his chance. He fired, and the course of history veered with those bullets. It was not a meticulously planned success, but a moment where error and intent met with deadly consequences. The assassination itself did not make world war inevitable. What followed was a series of decisions by leaders, diplomats, and generals that transformed a local tragedy into a global catastrophe. Each step was marked by calculation, fear, and the logic of alliances. Austria-Hungary, desperate to assert its authority and deter Serbian nationalism, looked to its powerful ally, Germany, for support. Berlin's leaders offered a blank check, a promise of unconditional backing, emboldening Vienna to act aggressively. Austria-Hungary issued a harsh ultimatum to Serbia, demanding sweeping concessions. Serbia accepted most demands but balked at those that threatened its sovereignty. Austria-Hungary declared itself unsatisfied and within days declared war. Russia, bound by Slavic ties and its own ambitions in the Balkans, mobilized in defense of Serbia. Mobilization was not just a show of force, it was a commitment that could not easily be reversed. The machinery of war began to turn. Germany, fearing encirclement by Russia and France, activated its own war plans. The Schlieffen Plan called for a lightning strike through Belgium into France, hoping to defeat the Western enemy before turning east. The violation of Belgian neutrality drew Britain into the conflict. Within weeks, a single act of violence in Sarajevo had set off a chain reaction. Alliances, designed for deterrence, became engines of escalation. Decisions made in embassies and war rooms pulled nation after nation into the vortex. Mobilization timetables left little room for negotiation or delay. Each government believed that acting first was the only way to avoid disaster. Diplomats scrambled to halt the slide, but trust had evaporated and the window for compromise closed. The logic of alliances meant that a local crisis could not remain contained. What began as a dispute between Austria-Hungary and Serbia became, within a month, a world war involving all the great powers of Europe and, eventually, nations from every continent. Miscommunication and miscalculation played their part. Leaders misread intentions, underestimated risks, and overestimated their own control. The desire to preserve honor and prestige overrode caution, and the machinery of war ground inexorably forward. The assassination in Sarajevo was rooted in Balkan politics, a struggle over national identity, empire, and autonomy. But the systems built by Europe's powers made it impossible to keep the crisis local. The world was bound together by treaties and timetables. As the dominoes fell, the cost became clear. By the end of 1914, millions of soldiers were locked in brutal trench warfare from the English Channel to the Swiss border. The optimism of pre-war Europe vanished, replaced by horror and disillusionment. World War I unleashed devastation on an unprecedented scale. New technologies, machine guns, poison gas, heavy artillery turned battlefields into hellscapes. Generations of young men were lost in the mud and wire of the Western Front. The war's destruction did not stop at the battlefield. Civilian populations suffered from famine, disease, and displacement. Entire societies were transformed by loss, sacrifice, and the demands of total war. The old order was crumbling. By 1918, 4 empires had collapsed: Austria-Hungary, Germany, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. Borders were redrawn, monarchies toppled, and new nations emerged from the ruins. The world that emerged after the war was fundamentally different. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh penalties on Germany and redrew the map of Europe. But the peace was fragile, sowing seeds of resentment and instability. The unresolved issues of World War I would help pave the way for an even greater conflict 2 decades later. The war also sparked revolutions and the rise of new ideologies. In Russia, the Bolsheviks seized power, leading to the world's first communist state. Across Europe, the trauma of war undermined faith in old institutions and gave rise to radical movements. The legacy of World War I is not just found in borders or treaties, but in the deep scars left on societies. The sense of loss, the questioning of old certainties, and the search for meaning shaped the entire 20th century. Looking back, it's tempting to see the assassination as the moment everything changed. But history is rarely so simple. The wrong turn in Sarajevo mattered, but only because the world was already set on a dangerous course. Contingency plays a powerful role in history. Small mistakes, a misunderstood order, a chance encounter can have outsized consequences. But those moments only matter when larger systems are already stretched to the breaking point. The story of World War I is a lesson in how interconnected our world is. A crisis in one corner can ripple outward, shaped by alliances, ambitions, and fears. The assassination was the spark, but the gunpowder had been laid over years of rivalry and mistrust. Understanding the deeper causes of World War I helps us see how fragile peace can be. It is not enough to focus on a single event. We must look at the structures, decisions, and attitudes that make catastrophe possible. The leaders of 1914 did not set out to destroy their world. Many believed they were acting rationally, defending their nation's interests. Yet, their choices, shaped by fear, pride, and the pressure of alliances, led to disaster. Diplomacy failed, not because no one tried, but because the systems in place made compromise nearly impossible. Mobilization plans, secret treaties, and mutual suspicions locked Europe into a path that was hard to escape once the crisis began. The war's true origins lie in the intersection of chance and structure, of human error and systemic weakness. The wrong turn in Sarajevo was dramatic, but it was the world's readiness for violence that made it catastrophic. If we remember only the assassination, we miss the deeper lesson. History is not just a series of accidents. It is shaped by the choices of individuals and the systems they build. Both matter, and both can tip the balance between war and peace. The devastation of World War I reminds us that even the most advanced societies can stumble into disaster. Progress, technology, and civilization are no guarantees against tragedy when mistrust and rivalry go unchecked. As we look back, we should ask not just what happened, but why the systems of the time failed to prevent catastrophe. What made leaders take risks? What made compromise so difficult? The answers reveal the complexity of peace and the dangers of complacency. The wrong turn in Sarajevo changed the world not simply because of a single mistake, but because it exposed the fragility beneath Europe's powerful facade. The real danger lay not in the spark, but in the powder keg waiting to explode. History turns on both accident and design. The events of 1914 show us that even small, unintended actions can have global consequences when underlying tensions are left unresolved. The world we inherit today is shaped by such moments, for better or worse. The story of World War I is a warning. It is a reminder that peace is never guaranteed, and that the decisions we make, large and small, can shape the fate of nations for generations. Understanding this helps us see the true stakes of history. So when we remember the wrong turn in Sarajevo, let us look beyond the simple narrative. Let us see it as the moment when deep-seated fears, ambitions, and mistakes converged, when the world was changed by both accident and the choices that preceded it. The origins of World War I remind us that no single moment, no matter how dramatic, can explain the collapse of peace. It is the systems, the rivalries, and the failures to understand one another that make history's greatest tragedies possible. The wrong turn was not destiny. It was the final link in a chain forged by decades of competition, mistrust, and unresolved conflict. The lesson is not just about Sarajevo, but about how the world can be led astray by its own fears and ambitions. To understand history is to recognize the interplay of chance and structure, of individual decisions and collective pressures. Only by seeing the full picture can we hope to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. World War I was not caused by a single bullet or a single moment of carelessness. It was the result of a system already primed for disaster, where one wrong turn was all it took to unleash the storm. The legacy of that day in Sarajevo is not just the tragedy that followed, but the enduring lesson that peace depends on more than luck. It depends on understanding, restraint, and the willingness to look beyond the obvious. In the end, the world changed forever, not because of one mistake, but because the structures of power, fear, and ambition made catastrophe possible. Remembering that is what gives history its power and its warning. The fall of peace in 1914 reminds us that history is never inevitable. It is made, moment by moment, by the choices and errors of those who live it. And sometimes, all it takes is a single wrong turn to change everything.